Hi, I'm Helen. This is my fourth video for Writer's Edit. And if you've been watching these videos, you might remember from the first one, way back when, I showed you guys a yellow envelope and then told you I couldn't tell you anything about it. Sorry about that. Now, I can tell you about it. So, it's been officially announced that Inkerman and Blunt, so the Melbourne publisher, has signed my first novel and it's due to be published at the end of this year. Super exciting. And so with that in mind, what I thought I'd do is kind of share with you a couple of lessons I learnt along the way. First lesson, number one, be honest with yourself about whether the manuscript is ready to be put out into the world or not. So a little bit of backstory on that. The first draft of my novel was in first person, and I kind of had a niggling feeling that maybe that wasn't quite working. But obviously, your novel's your baby. You've spent so long on it, and I kind of wasn't ready to rewrite the whole thing. Basically, I'd spent a lot of time writing it and a lot of time editing it. I got some great feedback. I'd always heard that publishers are really crap at getting back to you. You kind of send your submission out into the world and it just kind of hangs out in this black hole and you never hear back from anyone, basically. My experience was super positive compared to that. So I heard back from nearly all the people that I submitted to, and the majority of responses were great, as in they wanted to read more. They were asking me questions about my writing experience. So that was all really good. And then it kind of got a little bit further and a little bit further, and the kind of common thread in their feedback was, oh, it's not quite ready yet. And I knew what it was. I took the manuscript back and just went ahead and rewrote it in third person as it should have been from the beginning, and worked really hard at refining all the issues that then that raised. And so be honest about where the manuscript's at and make sure it's as perfect as it can be before you submit it to publishers. Know how to balance between making it as perfect as it can be, but also recognizing that it's not going to be perfect. It's hard to find that balance, but if you can, that's great and you'll be a happier writer for it. The second thing that I would advise is having a submissions spreadsheet. And I know as writers, well, for me anyway, the word spreadsheet just makes me go, ugh. Like, I don't like spreadsheets. I don't like maths. I don't like all those tiny little squares just taunting me. But a really good friend of mine, Ben, he sent me his submission spreadsheet, and so I didn't really have to do anything except put in the publishers that I was submitting to. But this was amazing. So you have like columns for publisher, their email address, their Twitter handle, when you submitted, what their response time is like, and then the result. I'm a big believer in multiple submissions, so I don't want to send one submission and then wait 6 months before I can send it out to everyone else. I think as a writer, you have earned the right to send this to as many people as you can at a time, and if someone wants it and tells you, great, but you shouldn't be waiting around 6 months on one person. End rant on that. But submission spreadsheet, amazing. It will make managing those submissions and the waiting times and knowing when you can follow up and things so much easier. So if you take one thing away from this video, it'd be that. Another thing I didn't really realise when I first started submitting the manuscript was how many other elements there are to a submission. So you have your manuscript, obviously, but then there are things like a synopsis, and that can be two different types of synopsis. It can be a 300-word synopsis, it can be a one-page synopsis, or however long they want it to be. So you can have multiple versions of just a synopsis. And then you have something called a covering letter, then you have an author bio, you may or you may not have a query letter. So there are all these different aspects to a submission that you've got to then do after you've perfected your manuscript. So I would advise having those ready, like spend a week, spend 2 weeks, or however long you want, getting all those elements ready. So then when you look at a publishers' submission guidelines and they say, we want your manuscript, we want a synopsis, we want an author bio, and we want a covering letter, you go, yep, I have all of those things, here you go, and you send them off on their way. As opposed to what I was doing at the beginning, where I would go to the publisher and their submission guidelines, and they'd say, we want this, 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 and this, and then I would have to go out and go, oh, I've actually got to write all this stuff now, which really slows the submission process, and it's a bit of a downer. So, yeah, I'd have all those elements ready. Next point I would say, and I think it's common sense, but I'll just throw it out there, research the publisher. What are they publishing? What have they published recently? What have they published recently that's doing really well? What's their social media like? Are they digital first? Are they digital only? Are they print on demand? Are they, mass trade paperbacks? Know all of these things, because in your head you will have an idea of what you want your book to be when it's published. So really know what they're publishing, how they're publishing it, and how then that fits with the idea that you have of your book. The last thing that I would say is don't give up. And I know that's like such a cliche in the writing industry. Like, there are all these like motivational posters and stuff and, motivational image quotes that we see all over social media. But they're there for a reason. They're to get your chin up in the air. Like, you're doing well. If you're submitting to publishers, you're halfway there, Well, maybe not halfway, but you're on the road. But yeah, don't give up. I mean, my journey at the beginning, it seemed so promising. Like, I had such great reactions from publishers when, to be honest, I'd set myself up for disappointment. I kind of knew that it was really hard to get people interested, especially in a first-time author. So I kind of sent it off and then tried to forget about it because I wasn't expecting, big replies or anything. And so then I kind of got all this interest, and I was like, hey, this, maybe I'm going to have this fairy tale submission story, which, I'm at the end of that tunnel now. But at the time, it was like a year and a half of, constant checking my emails and back and forth with editors, and so many close calls that, I was offered a contract, but it wasn't quite what I wanted. You just got to keep going, because if you are dedicated enough in perfecting your work, if you are dedicated enough to try and get it out there, I really think it'll happen. So all of those are my tips, advice, kind of personal anecdotes for the submission process, and I hope you could take something away from it. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. See you next time. Bye.